Hi everyone, Evan Alexander here. Today I want to do a walkthrough of the ML Prime system. If you're new to the ML Light Kit, this is going to show you how to work everything. And if you're upgrading from the old version, this is going to show you all the new features. So the first thing that we've done is we've greatly reduced the overall number of fixtures. The old kit originally had 20 different units to kind of achieve everything that you could do. And the new kit now it's down to 7, which is great. So you can still do everything you could do plus a lot more. So it just seemed like there were lights for gobos and lights for not gobos and lights for hanging and lights for the floor, and we just decided to really streamline it all and just get it down to kind of the minimum amount of fixtures and make them work as efficiently as possible. So let's jump in and take a look at the ML Prime. When you open the scene, this is what you're going to see. We've taken everything and put it into one file instead of spreading it out over other files. So it's just going to make it easier for you to work with. It's going to make it easier for us to push out updates. And now everything's just contained in one nice, neat package. As always with the system, there are a few things we need to make it work. The first being a Redshift environment. This is what's going to make the haze in the lights. So you can use this one, copy and paste it into your scene if you want. I've just added a noise material to this to kind of break it up a little bit. But you can start from fresh here under Create Environment, Redshift Environment. So that's critical. And then the other thing is in our Redshift viewer, if we come to the settings here, I've activated bloom and I've activated streak. And this is what's going to give us the glow and the lens flare around the kind of can of the instrument. You can play with the intensity of either of these and dial it in to taste. This will happen globally then throughout the whole scene. So those are the things that you need to make the system work. So first up is the ML Prime, kind of the main instrument that we've built the system around. I've just turned everything else off here for right now so we can focus on this. If you activate the light and come down to the user data here, there's a tab for ML Prime. So everything to control the light is all in this one interface here. So starting at the top just with the power on and off. So by default the light is on, but you can turn it off here as well. And then we also have added this C-clamp on and off. So now with the new system, if you want to use this as a hanging light, you can keep the C-clamps on and attach it to a pipe or truss or scenery. If you want to use it as a floor mount, you can just turn this off, come into the coordinates, and if you change the banking by 180 degrees, now we have a floor mounted light, and all of the controls will work exactly the same. So it's totally up to you. This was just something that we thought would be easier for everybody if any light could kind of work in any position and keep things a bit more streamlined. Next, let's talk about focus. So at the very most basic level here, you can just control the panning and the tilting of the head just like you would any other moving light. So I can slide my tilt here, and then we also have pan to kind of spin the yoke around left and right. So these controls work just as you would expect. And again, if it's inverted for a floor unit, it's all going to work exactly the same. But now we have a targeting object for every light. In the old system, there were dedicated lights for targeting, and you had to use a very specific target. So now this system is set up that you can use anything you want in your scene. So if I were to grab one of these spheres and just drag and drop it right here into this target group, you can see now that the light is set up to target this object. Let's go back and clear that out. Now, there isn't always a really kind of clear piece of geometry you want to follow, or if you want multiple lights to follow one thing that's, maybe floating in space. we've created an actual target object that you can use. So this will not render in the scene, but will show up in your viewport. So if I were to grab this ML target and drop this in here, so now I can use this as a target. You can just use a null as well. This one is just set up to give you a little bit more kind of options for visualizing it. So with the actual target, we can control the size here with the radius. We can control the aspect ratio, and then you can also control the color. So I like to use multiple versions of these targets and kind of color code them. So I know, a specific system, this is the target for the blue, and then maybe a different lighting system has a red target. Totally up to you. But now this capability is built into every light, which is great. So you can also use the eyedropper here to just click on this and then come up and pick on something in your scene. And so now the sphere again has become the target. And if you want to just dump this out here, just clear this out. And now you're back to using the pan and the tilt controls. When you have a target, it will override whatever is in the pan and tilt until you clear it out. And then pan and tilt will kind of come back into play. And finally, in focusing here, the old system, you could see the cone of the spotlight. And we found that in really large scenes with lots of lights, it was just impossible to look through all of that in the viewport. So now by default, that is hidden, but we've added this guide line. So if I turn this on, I'm just going to get a line coming right out from the light, and I can control the scale of this if you want. The slider will only go up to 1,000 inches, but you can grab the numerical part of this and go higher if you want. So you can turn this on and off depending on whatever you need, if it's helpful for you. Also, the guide line will match up to the color of the light. So that might make it easier when you're looking at a lot of lights to understand kind of what's doing what. So we just added that in for focus. The output part of the light remains the same as the old system, and it's pretty self-explanatory and straightforward. So we have the light intensity, which is just going to basically be the overall brightness. I do recommend, if you want to turn the light off, to actually kill the switch here instead of just running intensity to 0. If you run the intensity to 0, the computer's still doing work to calculate this, even though there's no kind of light output. So just keep an eye on that. And then Redshift lights have intensity and exposure. So I've added in sliders for both of those. So you can mostly use intensity for kind of everything that you need. But if you just need more kind of oomph, if you want to go supersonic, the light exposure can really kind of enhance that. And you'll see when we get into cone angle, when I get into really narrow beams, like kind of, Sharpie kind of just little slivers of light, they need a lot more intensity and exposure to be able to be seen. And so exposure can really kind of help you out there. The volumetrics, that's going to be the visibility of the cone. And so this is going to let us basically control haze contribution on a per light basis, which is great. So it defaults to 5, but I can lower this down or I can raise this up. So you have control kind of over the haze of the light, independent from the intensity of the light, right? So if you want it to be really kind of bright and flary, but you don't want this much kind of haze, you can just kind of control that individually. Cone angle does just what you think it does. It's going to give you degrees. I have built the system to kind of unrealistically expand to 120 degrees. I know there are no moving lights out there that actually go this wide, but it just seemed silly to kind of limit people into, kind of a fixed size and number, because you just never know. So you'll see here when we get really low here, when I get down to like 4 or 5 degrees, you can see the visibility really goes down. So coming in and kind of bumping up that exposure can kind of really help you get that beam back. So you're just going to constantly be adjusting these on a per need basis. Next we have the color, and so this also will work just as you think. You can basically just dial in any color that you want here for the light. There are multiple light input systems in Cinema4d, so they're all available to you here. You can use whichever system you are kind of most comfortable with. So I like just this good old color picker here. Maybe we get rid of orange here, and we'll just go back to this. And so color does exactly what you think it does. And now every light also has a gobo slot. So again, the old system had gobos in the ML2, but not gobos in the ML1. So all lights now have a visible lens, and you can add any kind of gobo that you want in here. So I'm just going to grab this black and white JPEG and just throw this in here. Just like an image texture, it's going to ask us if we want to make a local copy. I'm going to say no. And now we have our gobo in here. And so if we back up a little bit here, and we'll tilt this down a little bit and bump up the intensity a little bit so you can see it on the floor. So now we have this gobo image. And I can come in here with the softness. It's nice and crisp here, but if I up the softness, it's just like running the barrel on a old ellipsoidal. We can kind of knock the focus out on this. So if we keep this at 0, you'll get a nice crisp image here. And then, we can play with whatever kind of coloring that we want. Now, I will point out that this is just a black and white gobo, and so it's working well with the color. But we can also use, let me just take this back to white here. We can also use color images. So if I were to grab this JPEG in here, so we can kind of use these lights almost like a projector, which is really nice. It does let you kind of come in here and add, colored JPEGs, images. I'm just, looking at some of these kind of abstract color images to use as gobos in the scene. The one thing to know about this, though, is that this color is getting blended with the master color. So if you are using a JPEG or a PNG with color, you're going to want to make sure that the master color is set to white, because if I kind of tint this, it's really, the image is still there, but really this is kind of overriding it, or, blending with it. And so you will get, kind of weird results in here, which maybe you like, but you probably want to keep this set to white to be able to keep your imaging kind of at its purest. So there you go. And then finally here, if we just, why don't we open the cone up here just a little bit so we catch a little bit more. Just like every other light in Cinema4d, we have include and exclude. So this just works like the greatest shutter ever known. Anything that you want the light to exclude, you just drag and drop down in here. So if I were to take the plane, the floor plane, and drop it in here, you can see that the light has kind of disappeared from the floor. And if I were to, let's say, take this sphere here and exclude that, you can see now that the object is excluded from the light. Or you can reverse it if you only want the light to really affect one object, or 2 objects. Then you would just switch this to include, and now it's only going to hit in here. If you're playing with this and you're not getting any light output and you can't understand why, if this is set to include and there's no object in there, nothing is going to show up. So by default, it's set to exclude. And this just works just like every other light in Cinema4d. So that's it for the ML Prime. Now we'll take a look at the prime CS. This is a cloner straight. And so this is going to let you set up kind of multiple lights in a position. So the controls are very similar here. So we can turn the light on and off. We can adjust the C clamp. And again, if you start to play with the angle here, you could hang these sideways if you wanted to. So however you want to use these, the controls will work the same no matter how you have it set up. So the focus is kind of the same here, right? We've got our pan, we've got our tilt, or this is actually pan and this is tilt. And so these work just as you would expect here. And so you can see that everything's happening. Now, when we work with this in default, the light beams are parallel. So what's happening is that, you know, all the lights are kind of following the same angle and the same directionality. And that might be what you want. Or this also now has a targeting system built in, but this system is set up a little bit different than the single light. So if I were to take this target here and add it to the target, you'll see that nothing happens here. We have to actually turn the system on. So this one has an on-off switch here. And so now what's happening is that all of the lights are pointed at this same kind of point. So with this targeting system now, we can get multiple lights or whole systems of light to point at one point in space. And again, we can use any object we want in here for the actual target. So that's fine. So if I just turn this off, now it goes back to its kind of pan and tilt system, just like we would expect. And if I turn the system on, then it's going to kind of come back into its targeting mode. One thing to note that's weird, if you have targeting turned on, but you haven't selected a target, the system goes a little haywire. Because right now, it's basically pointing to kind of the hidden target object that's making the system work. And it's really just looking for an actual target. So don't be surprised if that happens. You need to have a target in there and then also just kind of turn the system on and off. Now there's also this reverse button. So what's happening here is that all of the lights are kind of coming in and are pointing towards this one object. And so what reverse does is, I know you're surprised, it does the reverse of that. It actually will push all of the lights away in the other direction. It literally spins the head of the light around. And so this is really good for creating like fans of light. And instead of having the lights all kind of point down to a single source, this is going to give you the ability to kind of spread them out in space. And so there are cases here for this where you want to actually put the target behind the light because it's kind of repelling away from where that system is. And so if you go behind the lights and the closer you get to the light, the further kind of out and the wider they will be. So all of this is just kind of built in here so that you can adjust and kind of play with these things any way that you want. And if I uncheck reverse, we're just kind of back to where we were, where we have this target object that's everything is following. So that's great. And then below this, we have the actual cloner controls. So this works just like a regular cloner tool, except it's already set up for you. So I can just literally increase the count number here and we'll add more lights in. And you'll see, even if I move the system and it's in target mode, it's still going to kind of stay locked in however you have this kind of set up. So we can increase our count. I think the slider will max out at 20, but again, the number field here, I'm just clicking in here and dragging, this will go up to 100. So should cover all your needs here. And so then, just like a cloner, we've kind of added in positioning controls right here. It defaults to 4 feet spaced out, but you can kind of play around with your spacing. And again, the slider will max out at 120, but you can keep going if you need to really kind of spread these out. And you can go negative if you want to kind of flip to the other side. So either way is fine. And then you can also kind of clone and move in Y and or Z, either all at once or together. So this really gives you, so if you're doing kind of side armed hung lights vertically on a truss, you know, you could really only adjust it in Y, and you know, then you're going to get this kind of vertical stack of lights. So totally up to you. So it is kind of just like a standard cloning system. It's just that we've kind of streamlined it all into the one system. And for the most part, the output stuff is going to all work the same as the other light here. Let's just reduce our numbers down a little bit, and we'll kind of center up on here. And so light intensity, exposure, the volumetric stuff, this all works exactly the same as the previous light. Got the gobo system in here, and the color, softness, that's all the same. Include and exclude, that's going to work the same as the kind of main prime instrument. The only difference here is that this system now has a color randomizer in here. So again, the basic kind of system works just as you would expect for color, which is great. And the gobo system works the same. If you want to put in colored JPEGs, set this to white, or you can use black and white images for the gobos and just kind of drop whatever color you want in here. But now we've added this thing called color randomizer. And so if I just twirl this open here and scroll down, you're going to see that this is going to work on a gradient system. And again, it's going to blend these colors in with your kind of base color. So you're going to want to make sure that this is set to white for this. And so if I turn on random here, you'll see that what it's doing is it's just randomly distributing these two colors. So by default, I've set it up for just orange and blue so you can see it. And you can see now as you adjust this, if I move the blue slider over so there's more orange, the randomness here gets kind of, you know, leans more towards orange. And if I slide it the other way, you'll see that it's going to kind of, you know, spread out the system a little bit. So we can really play with this gradient all you want. If I just click on any one of these nodes, I can come in here and just change the colors to whatever I want. If I click below the system here, I can add in a node, and so we can kind of add in here. We'll make this really ugly system. If I right click right on the bar, I can say distribute knots, and then it will evenly kind of spread everything out. And so you can just kind of play around with this any way that you want to kind of get your own kind of setup in here of randomization. And so then Cinema comes with these preloaded gradients here. So if I open up the gradient presets, so I can use any of these preset ones that kind of come with the system. So if I double click here on Scheme 5, you can see that now I have all of these in here. If I don't like how this is being distributed, but I like this range of colors, I can change the seed here. So this is just controlling the randomization of the system. By default, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But every time I change this, I'm going to get a kind of slightly different result. So we're just you're going to have the ability to kind of change this. You can animate this value if you want to kind of scrub through this kind of effect. And this is just going to let you kind of keep changing the system. Now, I have found that of course, it's working flawlessly now, but sometimes when I change and load in a different gradient, if this happens here, just click on the gradient presets here. If sometimes when I click on a new gradient, it doesn't change in live for me. And so we've just added this refresh button. So if you're changing the color and, you know, nothing's happening in here, then just try refresh here. Seems to be working fine now, of course. And so this is great. And if you want to take this and kind of, customize this a little bit more, so maybe this is more what you want. And so now I can save this as well. So we can add this in here and, we'll just call this EA gradient 2 and we'll say, okay. And so now it's just added these kind of into, looks like it opened up our asset browser here. It looks like it's just added this into it. So if we come in here now and we open up our gradient preset, you can see here that it's added my preset. Your presets are at the very bottom of the list of Maxon stuff. So this just lets you set up kind of palettes that you want to kind of go to, per show, per artist. And then you can come in here and really kind of play around with the randomizing. So I'm pretty excited. This is a big new feature, and I hope that this helps you kind of get more realism out of the system. Include and exclude is going to work exactly the same. And that's really it for the CS. While we're here, I'll just say that the CC system, this really works exactly the same as the CS system. The only difference is that this is set up for kind of circular truss and a circular situation. So the lights, the output, the color randomizer, all of that works the same. There's pan and tilt on here as well. And the only real difference here is the cloners. So we have a radius here, so you can make this more or less. Again, the slider is going to max out at 120, but you can get in here and keep going up to 1,000 inches. And so then if we just up the count here, we can just add in a lot more lights. And again, the old system only let you kind of deal with pan and tilt on these. You can get some nice kind of spiral effects here. But this system now also is going to let you add a target. And so if you want this whole system here to kind of follow this target, absolutely, you can do it. So that's really the only difference between the CC, cloner circle, and cloner straight. They all work exactly the same. Now we'll take a look at the prime bar. This instrument is the same as the ML3 was. We've just kind of given it a facelift with some of the new features. And so this light also at the top here has just power on and off and C-clamp on and off. So again, you can just kind of spin this around if you want a floor-mounted instrument and kind of turn this off. Here, we'll work with this one kind of floor-mounted. Here, if you zero out the height coordinate here in Y, you should be sitting exactly on the ground. So that's nice. And so in this instrument now, so the only thing we can control here is tilt, but this will spin our head around. It's set up to go to 100 degrees in either direction. I think that's the max, yes. And this also has a guideline, so similar to the other light, if you want to add in some kind of guideline for you here. And again, I think this should, this will change to reflect the color that you're actually using in the light, which is really nice. And light intensity, volumetrics, all of this works exactly the same as the other light. So this is just going to let you kind of play more or less with all of these different values to kind of dial in the look that you want. And then now this light has a beam spread, so it's defaulting here to 10 degrees, but we can really, let's just turn up the volumetrics a little bit so you can see it. We can really kind of play around with, now this is using an area light, not a spotlight, so it doesn't have like a cone angle per se. But if you start to really bring this beam spread down, you can see that you can really get these fingers of light in here. We might have to kind of up our exposure a little bit. And then if we, start to kind of widen it out here again, then we can get into this, kind of bigger, kind of full, coverage, really wide. And so this is great. And you can put this light into a cloner, into symmetry. You can kind of use it, any way that you need to. The color and texturing will kind of work the same. The texturing's a little bit different in that it doesn't use a gobo per se, but let me just open up my file here. If you were to take a JPEG, kind of like this enormous one here, shrink this down so we can see it. Here we go. So you could load this in here and use this kind of as a gobo, as a kind of a color guide in here. So you could actually kind of come in. Basically, the whole thing is one lens. It's just that there's holes in the geometry for each kind of, actual lamp head. And so you can put imagery into here as well to kind of, kind of tint it and kind of gobo it out, just as you would with the other units. Include, exclude, that works exactly the same as all the other lights and all the other cinema lights. This light also has a shutter, so basically you can turn on and off each of these kind of individually here. If I start to turn them off, you can see. So if you want to come in here and kind of manually play around with this, or kind of break up the pattern a little bit, then you have individual control over all of these kinds of elements. And the CS unit here, this is the one that I use the most, which is still up in the air here. So the light works exactly the same as the other system here. It's just that now we've we've built a cloner into this so that you can just kind of build these really long runs of, these kind of strip lights, floor lights, X bars, whatever you're, kind of working with here. And the system is set up so by default that everything is spaced out as 1 meter. I'm working in inches here, which is why we have this insane number, but this is 1 meter. And if you're at 1 meter, then the spacing on all the lamp heads will be perfect. So you won't be able to see the break in the pattern, but you can change this and play. You can, just like the other system with the clones, you can kind of space these out. You can ramp them, you can move them upstage, downstage, whatever you need in here. There is an effectors system. There's a few effectors already in there. This is for some kind of more advanced usage. There is a video on my YouTube channel about using effectors in what was then called the ML3, so maybe I'll update the title. And that will show you how to use this. This is going to let you set up things like passing different kind of rays of color through the lights, or being able to kind of play with intensity, play with kind of tilting different instruments. Really, if you're getting into kind of animation or really wanting to customize some of these looks, then effectors can be a great thing. I'm not going to cover it in this tutorial, but look for the other one on my YouTube channel. And then all the other things are going to work exactly the same. I feel like I keep saying that, but it's true. We try to be as consistent as possible in the whole system. So intensity and exposure, you've got your volumetric controls, you've got your beam spread, color works just like you would expect here. Again, if you're adding in some kind of colored texture or gradient in here, then you're going to want this to be white because those colors are going to blend together. And then same thing, it's got this randomized color system in here, and that is going to work exactly the same as the previous system that I showed you. And if we scroll down a little bit here, so you can load in these presets if you want. See, there you go. It takes a sec, but you might have to hit refresh. And so again, this is just going to help you, kind of break the system up a little bit. One thing worth noting here is if I change one of these colors to black, then let's refresh, then that basically has the effect of turning off those, kind of lamps. So as I kind of play around with this system here, and if we, really kind of play with how this is, like if we set up this little green gradient here, you can really kind of dial in and down, as kind of much or little of this as you want. So you can kind of play around with this. Effectors will give you this effect too, but using a black color in the gradient, it gives you kind of a quick way to do it. What's hard, of course, is being able to kind of control it. But if you're trying to do an animation here, playing with this seed will give you, some kind of strobing or kind of tracking effect. So there you go. That is the ML bar. Now let's take a look at the Prime video wall. This tool got some nice upgrades. I'm excited about this one. There's two different versions in here. One of them is based, let's spin around here. One of them is based on a 1 meter tile, and one of them is based on a 500 millimeter tile. So they work exactly the same. It's really just up to you as to which one you want to use, depending on how big your wall is, which product you're using. So, but the controls on them work exactly the same. So I'm just going to kind of show you one of them here. So the new system here in Prime, everything originates from the bottom center. The old system, it worked from the center, which was hard to kind of line things up with, floors and decks and platforms. So now I'm really happy that everything works kind of from the bottom and from the center. So once you kind of land your video screen where you want it, you can now play with width and height, and these numbers are per tile, and this is the 1 meter. So right now we're 5 meters wide and 3 meters tall, but we can just come in here and kind of keep playing with our tile counts here and really like stretching these out to be whatever we want it to be. So you get some weird kind of viewport Z-fighting here if you're zoomed out, but that's okay. It still renders nice and clear. And so so this just lets you kind of set up in width by tile and height how far you want it to be. This default image is in here, but we can just kind of grab any image that we want. So if I were to just drag in another image here, I'm going to say no. Then again, my video image is going to just update for us. So to be whatever we want it to be, which is great. So now we've got screen brightness and light output. So there's two different things going on here. Screen is controlling kind of the visual that we see and how bright or dim the actual kind of intensity of the screen is. The problem with video walls in 3D is that in the real world, the screen gets bright and it throws a lot of light, especially if it's, 13 meters wide. But in 3D, for us to get, kind of good light output and reflections out of this, we have to really crank up the screen brightness. And then what that does is it just kind of burns out our artwork. So the system here is set up for you to have individual control over both of these. So I usually keep my screen at about a 2. And so this way I can see my imagery. If there's lights hitting it, it's bright enough that, it's not going to get affected by shadowing. You can obviously dial this in to taste. And then the light output, this is going to affect how much light it's going to kind of throw out here. If we look at these spheres here, you can see that as I kind of bring this down, so you can really kind of, play with this You know, we can kind of overexpose the brightness as well. And so you just have to kind of find the right balance for you, you know, visually. You know, you can lie with this and kind of break from reality where you have a video screen that's giving no light output. But, you know, I didn't want reality to kind of limit what you can and can't do with the system, because there's always these weird special need cases where, you know, you wish that you could just turn the light off, and so you can. A new feature in this version also is that now the video walls will give you volumetrics and volumetric haze. A little bit goes a long way with the system here, because, you know, keep in mind that this is a light and it's, you know, 13 meters by 9 meters tall, so it's massive. So a little bit here will just kind of go a long way. You can see you can very easily just kind of burn your whole world out. But the old system wouldn't do this at all, and so I'm really excited that you know, we've kind of gotten a way here to make this kind of show up in you for you. The old system also, you had to kind of constantly reset the imagery as you changed the size to it. And so now, no matter how big you make your tiling, the artwork is going to kind of stretch and fit into it. So it's up to you to kind of dial in the size of your screen. So like maybe you have a tall, skinny screen. So then you're going to want to create your artwork to this proportion. So this is, you know, 5 tiles wide by 10 tiles tall. So in Photoshop, if you made a canvas that was 5 inches by 10 inches, you'd be in the correct aspect ratio, and then your artwork would not stretch and fit on here. So it's up to you to kind of custom create the artwork to match the scale of it. But you can, you know, if it doesn't matter, if it's abstract, you can kind of just cheat it this way. And then we have controls here for image adjustment. So if I want to just kind of stretch this out a little bit or shrink it, I have this control, same thing vertically. And then we can also kind of offset the tiling. So if this is all zeroed out, then you're just going to get, you know, kind of one image per screen, which is, you know, 90% of the time this is what you're going to want. But for now, it's just going to let you kind of get in here. I don't know what happened to my preview image here. I freaked out the system. So these controls are available to you as you kind of need it here. So let's reset these to default. Oh, right, because these are supposed to be at 100%, not at 0. Don't listen to me. I'm new here. Everything should be at 100%. No, offset should be at 0. Wow. All right. And then last but not least, there's this checkbox here for hide tile backing. So I don't know if you can see it. You can't see it in the render here, but if I were to add in an area light here, just so we can kind of see the backside here for a sec. And this area light is throwing too many volumetrics here. So, right, the kit comes with these kind of simple tiles. It's not 1000% realistic, but there's enough detail there without being too polygon heavy to be able to kind of have the detail that you need. But you don't always want this. So maybe you've brought in your model of the video wall, but you just want to kind of put this screen in front of it. So if I check hide tile backing, you can see that all of that tile has now disappeared. And so I could hang this, you know, just downstage of the video screen, you know, that I've brought in from Vectorworks, or that the, you know, projection designer or lighting team has given me. And so it gives me, or if you're doing a projection screen, you know, that's not a video tile, and you want to be able to kind of have these, this just gives you the option of turning this on and off. So some small improvements here, but I think really quality of life stuff that makes the tool a lot better. One thing I forgot about video walls, I knew that I would forget this. When you first open the scene, you'll see there's this weird annotation floating around here on the ground plane. And so this is a note just to remind you kind of specific to video walls here. We can go ahead and just turn this off. So the way the video wall system is designed, if you want to have multiple video walls inside of your scene, you have to copy and paste them. You can't like hold control and drag. So this is how I usually duplicate something. I'm on Windows. I'm going to hold control and just drag the sphere. And now I've made, another option. If you do that with the video wall tool, what'll happen is that the imagery on both of them will remain the same. So no matter what kind of JPEG you drop into the image thing, you're not going to be able to control the individual screens that way. So you have to actually, I'm hitting Command C and Command V, you have to actually copy and paste. And so then when you do that, that is going to let you kind of come in here and put an individual image, on each individual screen. So let's see if I can break the system here. So if I take this and just drag another copy over here, but now if I come in here and I say, okay, great, let's add a new image in here, you're going to see that both of them update. And if that's what you want, like if you're doing iMag or something, great, but chances are you don't want that. So you just have to make sure that annotation here is just a reminder to you to make sure that you do that. I've also built this note in to the actual tool. It's a bit of a drag, but it works fine. And lots of times you're copying and pasting from this into your show file. Just be careful inside your shows with multiple screens that you're using the proper copy and paste. And that's really it for using the system. There's going to be other videos coming soon that will talk about kind of use cases and how I use the system. I'll do some demos on kind of using the system with symmetry and takes. But for the basic kind of just how does each instrument and tool work, this should get you up and running. Happy rendering.